footage that's a different size to the footage of your project. Now, the project that I'm working on is an HDV project. You can either find that through File, Properties, or if you remember, we've got the icon over here, which is the same icon, does the same thing. Click on that one, and it brings up your Project Properties dialog box. And we can see it says template is HDV, mine is 1080 50i, because I work on a PAL system, 25 frames a second. Okay, so that's my project, and it means every pixel has been stretched by 1.33. The reason that this looks like a full widescreen 1920 by 1080 is that even though it's 1440 pixels wide, every pixel is stretched by a third, and that brings up the end result of making it look like 1920 wide by 1080 high. That's just how that particular thing works. So actually there's 1440 pixels going from side to side, not 1920. Okay, just bear that in mind and click OK. Now I want to bring a piece of footage into my Explorer, into my project media. I can do it through my Explorer, but I just want to show you something. I'm going to go to my D drive, and I've actually got the piece of footage down here, Big Lake. And I'm going to drop it into my Sony Vegas file. Drop it into my Sony Vegas file, shut that down. Now here is my Sony Vegas file in my Explorer. And if I shut down my D drive and then open it back up again and have a look, open up the D drive and go back to Sony Vegas, I'm going to see that that piece of footage has still not shown up. If you do move things around on your hard drive, you need to click this button here to force it to refresh the view. And when you click it, it goes right back to the beginning, and then you can see, there you go. There is the piece of footage that's actually been brought in. Now this piece of footage we can see from the bottom here is 1920 by 1080. Okay, so that's its full size. So that means all its pixels are of a ratio of 1 to 1. So they're as wide as they are tall, unlike this footage down here, which is all stretched, 1.33 wide by 1 tall. And I'm just going to drop this into the trimmer window so we can have a closer look at it. So if we play that through, it's a speedboat speeding along, and this particular footage is from videoblocks.com, where you can download stock footage. Okay, so it's nice fast footage, very interesting, what have you. Anyway, I'm going to click OK, but bear in mind that, and in fact I'm going to go to about there, let's say. Bear in mind that this is 1920 pixels from side to side, whereas this one is only 1440 pixels from side to side. Now let's actually add this to our timeline. So I'm just going to go to the end here, and I'm going to come to the end of this one. I'll snap that there. So let's add that to our timeline, and let's just go back to the beginning of the clip, and there we go. We've got the same view. Notice that no cropping has taken place. Okay, you'd have thought that because this was 1440 wide that it would have cut some off, but if you actually look at the images and you look at the width across the back, and you can see the distance there, the distance here, even though there might appear to be a slight bit of cropping, there is no cropping taking place. Everything is actually exactly the same. You've got the whole width of that individual clip. You can see it's absolutely right. And if we just get to a point where we've got something right at the edge here, so let's put it across till we've got something that's really obvious at the edge. So let's just get to the very end of that boat just there. Okay, and then pull this cursor along until it's at exactly the same point, which is there. You'll see if you look at the back of the boat, we've got exactly the same thing going. So no cropping has taken place. And this is quite important to realise, that this image has been, if you like, squished a bit to make sure it fits. And it's going to look just as good and work just as well on the timeline. Now, when clips are fairly similar, as these ones are, 1920 and 1440, they're fairly similar. It's not a big issue. But what happens when you bring in 4:3 footage? This is standard definition footage I've got here. So I've got these elephants, and this is 4:3. Now, if I was to drop this to the timeline, let's go to the end of this clip and drop this to the timeline, you're going to find that the actual size of the footage has been massively scaled up. The original footage, if I click on the actual footage here, you can see that it's 720 by 480. Okay, so it's NTSC footage. So 720 wide by 480 high. This is 1440 wide by 1080 high. So what's happened is this clip, which originally was 720 by 480, has been stretched. Certainly its height has to fit. So whereas it was 480 lines high, it's now been more than doubled in size to fit the height. but even so I've still got these black bars at the side. So you need to be very careful about this, because the quality of this, even at full resolution, when we export it, okay, it's going to look okay probably because this is quite small, but when you export it, it's going to look very poor, and you need to be very careful that you don't end up with footage that just looks awful because it doesn't really match very well. So you need to be careful when working with footage of different types. However, there is one other type of footage that I'm going to show you at the moment, which is red footage. So if I'm just going to go up, and you'll see that I've got one called red, which is by the red camera. I'm going to put the red camera footage here, and I'm going to click there, and you'll see that again it fits perfectly. If I double click to open it up in the trimmer, it fits perfectly. There isn't any problems at all with this footage. Everything fits perfectly because it's been scaled down. But look at the original size of this footage. If I click on it, can you see it is 4000 by 2.3000? This is an absolutely huge piece of footage. Now it works because it's been scaled down, and Sony Vegas has said, well, it's got to fit the timeline. The timeline is 1440 by 1080, therefore I'm going to make it fit and squash it down. Okay, so this has happened inside Sony Vegas, which is great. However, the problem is going to be if you're working in a red timeline, 4000 by 2.3000, and you happen to then bring in 1440 by 1080, which is then going to be massively scaled to fit and going to look awful. So you've got to be very careful that if you are going to use footage like that, that you've got to be either prepared to have it a lot smaller and scale it down so it fits in the middle of the screen, or you've got to be prepared for a loss in quality as it is somewhat overstretched to fit. In the next tutorial, we'll talk a little bit more about red footage and some of the problems you can get with working with that. My name's Andrew.